Setting boundaries is really hard. And, I just came from a session where my client and I talked about setting boundaries. And one of the things she told me was this: I fear setting boundaries. And I fear setting boundaries because every time I set a boundary, something bad happens. So if I don't set a boundary and I just avoid the whole thing that happened to me, everything is going to be fine, because I don't want to trigger that person to get angry with me, to dislike me, to disown me, to want me out of their lives. So I'm just not going to set a boundary. When you think like that, life gets harder. One of the reasons why is because we all have to have boundaries. And when our boundaries are violated, we should really make the other person know, you have violated me and I need you to be aware of that. I think in order for other people to respect us, we have to respect ourselves. And sometimes setting that boundary is respecting ourselves. It has taken me a very long time to get to that place. But, I think sometime after my early 30s, I realized that, I really need to set the boundary. So I'm going to give you some tips on how I set the boundary, how some of my clients have set the boundary, and how some of my colleagues have actually set the boundary with their family members. Let's jump in. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For all of you who are subscribed and participating, thank you so much. And for those who are new, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button so you can stick around with us. And don't forget to hit that bell button too, guys. I never really mention it at the beginning, but let me mention it, because every time you hit that bell button, you get notifications when I post videos and little short clips and all kind of fun stuff. So make sure you hit that bell button. In case you don't know me and you're new to the channel, my name is Tamara, and I'm an internationally and board certified trauma therapist. I'm also licensed in mental health, and I specialize within my private practice in treating children, teens, and families as well as adults. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, I think this video is pretty self-explanatory, so I really don't have to give you much explanation, but I do want to go ahead and just jump right into these particular tips, okay? So this is how to set boundaries with a sociopathic or psychopathic or just a toxic family member, okay? The first thing that I encourage you to do is make sure that you set the boundary and you make it very, very clear. Some family members will try you and test the boundary, and if you don't hold them accountable for testing the boundary, then they're going to try to put their toe over the line just a little bit more. I'm sure you've seen people who, especially children, they'll test the boundary, and if you are a little bit too fluid or you're easily manipulated, that individual is going to try to get a little further and a little further and a little bit further, right? Because this is how they are, right? This is kind of like the typical human behavior. This is how we are, right? We test the boundary. If we can get away with it once or twice, maybe even 3 times, then we'll try to get away with it a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, a 7th time until we're caught or put back in our place, It's kind of like speeders on the road, you speed and you didn't get caught by the police once, so you think it's okay to go ahead and speed on Tuesday because you're late for a meeting. And then as soon as you get pulled over by the police, then you realize, wait a minute, let me go back behind the boundary line and realize that, okay, I'm putting other people's lives in danger. I really could lose control of my car and wreck or kill someone. There is a law that I have to abide by, the speed limit. You start to realize that, okay, there are boundaries here and I'm bypassing all of them, right? So make sure that you make your boundary clear. And if it looks like the person is trying to test that boundary, set them back in their place right away. Don't let them get away with it, because if they do, they're going to continue to try to get away with it. Okay. I know that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's good if a therapist can kind of nudge you a little bit and remind you. The next thing is self-assess. And this is something that I do every Sunday, just between myself and, sometimes I share some things with my mom. We're kind of like each other's spiritual people, if you will. We kind of hold each other accountable spiritually. And so sometimes you can do that with somebody that you really care about or somebody that's really close to you, or you can do it by yourself. But make sure that you self-assess. Here are 4 things that I think you should do. 1 is you should ask yourself, what are my limits? And go ahead and write a little bit of an essay for yourself. What are my limits? Okay, that's question number 1. Number 2, why is the boundary crossing bothering me? Why is this person pushing me or dominating or trying to go across my boundaries bothering me? Where is that coming from on the inside of me? Is this person triggering something that I can't tolerate? What's going on here? Okay. How can I say no without really rocking the boat? Okay, there's another self-reflection question. And I think another one is, who will this hurt, if anyone, right? Because I think sometime in the back of our mind, we think if we set the boundary, we're going to hurt the person. But I think the reality is this: if we don't set the boundary, we're going to get hurt. So you want to be able to set that boundary and then self-assess. Why am I feeling this way? Is there a reason why I don't want to hurt them? Is there a reason why I feel like I'm going to betray them if I set the boundary, right? Self-assess and self-reflect, and then write down your answer. Sometimes your heart has to catch up to what your mind already knows. I've heard somebody say that before, and I thought, brilliant. Sometimes your heart really does have to catch up to what your mind already knows. Okay, prepare what you will and will not accept. Okay, that's number 3. Really prepare yourself for saying no, for saying, okay, we can do this, or for saying, no, I'm not okay with this. I'm not on board. So be prepared with, what you're going to say and why. Okay, because there are some people you set the boundary with, and the first thing they're going to ask you is, why? So you want to be able to say, you know what, here's why. Let me explain this. Let me lay it out for you, So you want to be able to prepare what you will and will not tolerate, okay? And prepare, I should say, what you're going to say if that person decides to question your boundary. Remind yourself why this boundary is here and why it's healthy and why it's needed. You don't want to get into the mindset of, why did I put this here in the first place? Like, it's okay if I don't put this up. No, it's not. There's a reason why you put the boundary up. You put the boundary up because something offended you, hurt you, deceived you, was problematic for you, whatever. And so you felt the need to put the boundary up. So don't get comfortable with the boundary up, right? And then begin to lax your boundaries and then second guess yourself, and then your boundary falls. It's not worth it. Don't do that. Sometimes it's okay, because sometimes we grow, we mature, we change our heart, we change our mind, things change. Fine. But you don't want to get into the flow of questioning yourself, second guessing, reducing your boundary, and then falling prey to another tactic of the sociopath or the psychopath within your family. Okay? I think you should also watch letting things slide. There are some family members who will push that boundary and they're hoping you will let it slide. Again, don't let it slide. Don't be double-minded. Don't waver. Stick to what you know you need to stick to. Always go by your intuition. Always go by wisdom. Always go by your heart. Always go by your faith, right? Always go by that firm thing that keeps you straight all the time, because we can waver, we can become double-minded, especially when it comes to our family. I talk about that right up here in this video. It's really hard to stay firm with a family that you don't want to have to put your defenses up against, your family. But if you have a family that pushes those boundaries, don't be afraid to stand firm. Don't waver, don't be double-minded. Be ready to feel terrible. I think that's another thing, I think setting the boundary means reasserting your authority, really upholding your values and your ethics. And when you feel a certain way, it's really, difficult to sometimes digest that. And it's hard to digest that you have to be this way, So you're going to feel bad. You're going to have second thoughts. You're going to have, doubting thoughts, and that's okay. But again, remind yourself why you felt this boundary was necessary. And lastly, I think, you need to find ways, and I need to find ways also as I move along in my life, right? I haven't arrived just because I'm a therapist. I also have my own struggles. So I need to do this last tip also, and it's find ways to reassert your boundary. Sometimes you need to reassert your boundary when you lay that boundary down and you've stepped away. Now the boundary is there. You're waiting for that person to respond. Sometimes, especially if that boundary has been tested, you need to reassert that boundary and say, nope, nothing has changed. Here we go. This is the way it's going to be. Learn to accept it. Sometimes you have to have that attitude and that disposition. Setting boundaries is really tough, but I hope this video was helpful in showing you how to manage a psychopath or a sociopath or a toxic family member. Because again, we're going to need to reassert and reassess and lay down the boundary all throughout our lives with various people, but mainly with family members who are unhealthy. So I do hope this video was helpful. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to stick around with us, and please give this video a thumbs up. It pushes us up in the search results of YouTube. Thank you so much for your continued support on this channel. We continue to grow, and I love every last one of you. So thank you so much for being here on my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.